Well, happy book week, everybody. My name is Kate, and I hope you are all enjoying the activities around books and your teachers have been celebrating in wonderful ways. The theme for book week this year is Curious Creatures, Wild Minds. And today we are very excited to bring you an extremely curious creature called Esmeralda. But Esmeralda has a history, and we're going to hear all about that history with the wonderful award-winning author, Robert Moore. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much, Kate, and welcome everybody.
Thank you. So before we chat with Robert this afternoon, I'd just like to acknowledge that the land that we meet upon today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and we recognise and respect their relationship with the land. So to our viewers out there today, welcome and thank you so much for participating in our webinar. We have people zooming in from all over South Australia, so thank you so much for joining us. Now, during the webinar, this is an interactive process, so please feel free to type in any questions that you have for Robert into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And as the webinar progresses, I will ask Robert your questions. It would also be really great to hear what school you're from and what your name is. So include that in the question as we go along. So Robert lives in the Adelaide Hills, but originally he came from a farm in Tasmania, where his family grew hops and raspberries. So Robert, Esmeralda is not just a character in a book, is that right?
No, she's not just a character. She was very much part of our family and very much a loved part of our family.
Yep, so here's a picture of Esmeralda, as she is on the title. If you haven't seen this book yet, then you're in for a real treat today. I'll just flip over. So I think, Robert, how would you feel about reading to us your story to start off with today?
To start off with? Yes, yeah. By all means. Please excuse my snout and my trotters, because what I'll do, I'll read a couple of double pages at a time and then hold up the illustrations. On Sunday, it was boiling. Esmeralda went to the waterhole and had a mud bath. She dug up a bottle and waddled off down the hill. Hope everybody can see that. On Monday, there was a torrential downpour. Esmeralda sheltered under the Tasmanian blue gums. She found a plastic bag floating in the paddock and waddled off down the hill. On Tuesday, it blew a gale. Esmeralda stood with her back into the wind. She grabbed a pair of trousers that had blown into the paddock and waddled off down the hill. On Wednesday, everything was fogged in. Esmeralda peered through the mist. She pulled up some rusty wire and waddled off down the hill. On Thursday, it was chilly. Esmeralda shivered and grunted sadly. She dragged a wisteria vine off the fence and waddled off down the hill. On Friday, the weather was changeable. Esmeralda was restless. She rooted for Twitch and waddled off down the hill. She collected a tree branch and waddled off down the hill. She unearthed a pair of rotting sneakers and waddled off down the hill. Finally, she squeezed into the old barn, picked up a huge slab of clover hay. Then waddled off down the hill one last time. By Saturday, the weather was perfect. Esmeralda spent all day making a nest underneath the cattle ramp. She was ready to farrow. On Sunday, Esmeralda had a rest.
That's lovely, Robert. Thank you. And then there's one final page.
There's one final page.
Very cute. Really cute. Thank you so much for reading that out to us. You've got such a nice reading voice. It's lovely to listen to. The text and the illustrations, the pictures just go beautifully together. Can you tell us a little bit about how yourself and Mandy worked together to produce Esmeralda's Nest?
Yeah, it's a long process with this particular story because I originally wrote it end of the 1970s. I'm probably as old as many people's grandmas and grandpas, but I had no idea what I was writing. I just wrote a story. But to bring it forward to when Esmeralda was accepted by wonderful Midnight Sun publishers here in Adelaide, I was asked to look for an illustrator because the ones that Midnight Sun had first recommended couldn't do it. And I wasn't all that happy with some of the illustration ideas that these particular people had. But I saw Mandy's work and I thought, aha, she's just the right person for Esmeralda's Nest.
And actually, Robert, right where you are sitting right now, you've got an image of a concept image of Esmeralda.
Yes, I do.
Right to show us that.
That's Mandy's first picture of first coloured picture of Esmeralda, and I thought, wow! And of course, you can see the white mark. She's a black pig with a white mark, and pigs like this are called Saddleback pigs. And she's just like Esmeralda. When I saw that picture of Esmeralda the first time, I thought, wow, she's come back alive. It was just so great.
And Mandy has a farming background, is that right?
Mandy has a rural background, farming background as well, loves animals, and it comes through in her work. And she understood straight away, what I was on about with Esmeralda. It was, I wanted to show Esmeralda's feelings as well. She's not just a dirty old pig that lives in a sty. She has character, she has feelings, she has emotions, she feels sad, she feels happy, and she lets you know with her grunting. She used to grunt in different ways.
Yeah, lovely. And the beautiful thing about this book is, yes, there's the story of Esmeralda as she's creating her nest, but what I really love is how the illustrations are actually telling a story alongside your story.
Thank you very much. It's really very, very important, because when I wrote Esmeralda in this way, it was to free Esmeralda up, to let her free, so that the illustrator had the freedom to show the pig in all her glory. And of course, when I thought about writing Esmeralda's Nest as a picture book, I was also thinking in pictures as well too. People think that when you write a story, if you're the writer, that you just write a story and that's all to it. But I had to think very carefully about writing a story that could have illustrations that would extend the story as well, make the story bigger than it is. You could have, the pig is under a tree, and then have a picture of the pig under a tree, but it's much, much more than that. It's what Esmeralda is feeling, what she is thinking, what she's doing next, what we as readers think she might be doing next as well. So there's a bit of mystery in there, and I wanted to get that mystery flowing right from the very beginning as well, so that every day she's doing these strange things, walking down the hill, or waddling down the hill, I should say, carrying pieces of all kinds of things like wisteria vines, boots, things like that. And she makes a nest with it. Yeah,
and Mandy's absolutely captured the relief of the farmer.
Yes.
In this picture here, where he finally finishes fixing the fences that we're imagining, I guess, we're inferring that Esmeralda has been destroying.
Yes, and that gate that the children are on, very much like the cyclone gates that we had on our farm as well. And Esmeralda used to put her snout underneath the gate and lift it off its hinges. But she was very determined. She knew what she wanted to do. She made a gap between the gate post and the gate and squeezed through it and waddled off down the hill. So, and when that was sort of fixed up, she'd find other ways to get out. But the farmer in this particular story as well, and my dad as well, we did not want to put her in a very, very narrow, horrible, what they call sow stalls, which are very narrow sort of cages where the pigs are put to have their babies. We wanted to allow Esmeralda as much freedom as possible. And the farmer in this story, and indeed my dad, always had a huge big pen on the ready so we could put her into pens and so she could have her babies in comfort. But on this occasion, the farmer gives up because Esmeralda knows what she wants to do and she's going to do it. So, and on our farm, we had a waterhole. I remember a waterhole. And another pig, not Esmeralda, another pig we had, I think we called her Mrs. McCricker. My dad was always naming our animals after sort of important people, famous people. Esmeralda actually was named after the Lady Mayoress of Hobart. And right back in the 70s, I don't know how she might feel about having a pig name after her, but anyway, she was very, very important. Anyway, one day, getting to Mrs. McCrickard, she decided to have her babies on a very, very hot day, and she actually started to have them right next to a waterhole. She dug a bit of dirt or mud right next to the waterhole and had her babies near the waterhole. And it was just too hot for her to sort of carry materials all over.
So that wasn't dangerous for the babies at all?
No. I remember finding her, and we actually did coax her into a big pen in the end, so like our own kind of farrowing pen, and she was able to have her babes there in comfort. But yeah.
So the word farrowing, is that just in relation to pigs having babies?
I believe it is. I've not heard it in relation to other animals. It just means that she's giving birth, having her babies. And I've never heard of cows farrowing or other animals that might have litters. Yes, it's a word that's always stuck with me, because I remember when Esmeralda had her first lot of pigs, her first litter. I looked up these little diaries we used to get sent from stock and station agents about pigs and how long they took to have their babies and stuff. And the word farrowing was used there. And I would have been about 12 or 13 at the time when Esmeralda had her first lot of babies. And there was all this information about how long the gestation period was. That's the how long it takes for a mum pig to have her babies before they're born. And it was 112 days and 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, it was roughly 112 days up until today since I saw the first copy of the book of Esmeralda's Nest. So it's 2 lots of 112 days, which are really important to me.
Yeah, isn't that ironic?
Yes, it is.
That's fantastic. And you actually saw Esmeralda have 2 of her litters, is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit of a sad story in a way. Pigs can sometimes get a bit cumbersome and can squash their babies. And I was there, and she nearly did at one stage, rolling the babies. But once they get a bit of milk into them from mum, they're okay. And I was able to rescue a pig. And I was kind of, wow, I want to watch what's going on here. It's a fascinating experience just to watch what animals do. You know, it was, and I was glad I was able to sort of rescue. And she had 10 pigs that time in that litter.
Yeah, wow. So 10 in one litter. Do you remember how many in the other?
Yeah, her first lot, she had 8.
8 and 10.
Yes.
Yeah. So Robert, animals have always played a very special role in your life, more of friends and important relationships form. I love the way that you name your animals. Let's start with Cherry the cow. Can you tell us a little bit about Cherry?
Oh, Cherry the cow, yes. She, we used to live down amongst the hops and the raspberries by the Lachlan Creek, and my granddad lived on the farm above us on a hill with Grandma, and he used to milk the cow called Cherry. And I remember Cherry the cow had a baby calf, and Esmeralda decided to go and check Cherry out, and Cherry sort of sniffed at her and then kind of wanted to horn her a bit. She was getting a bit too close, I think, to Cherry's calf. And when we first had Esmeralda, she was in this big pen, which was to become a farrowing pen, but she was eating lots and lots of special peas that my dad used to grow amongst the hops to give the hops extra fertilizer. But we also fed Esmeralda on these peas as well. She was in this big pen, and then we'd move the pen every day, so she had a fresh lot of peas to eat. She also had separated milk, probably from Cherry, the cow, to drink, and boiled barley, so she didn't go hungry, and what we called chats potatoes, old sort of potatoes which were no good. And my dad used to sort of cook them up in a special tin on the fire. And every morning I'd sort of have to I think my sister did too, feed Esmeralda. We'd give her boiled barley or chats potatoes and a bit of separated milk in a trough. and she'd eat that. But after when she and this is while she was a weaner, and a weaner is the name we give to a pig that's finished drinking from mum, and she's getting used to sort of growing up on her own accord. So after Esmeralda got a little bit bigger, we thought, yeah, she's too big for this pen. She needs to wander freely. And so she'd move in with the sheep. And my mum used to say that she'd hear the school bus coming home from school, and she'd come over to the gates and wait for us and grunt for us.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
And she was a bit like a sheepdog in a way, because the sheep would often follow her. You know, people say silly as sheep, but might be just clever as pigs, you know. And we'd talk to her. We'd make up sort of strange language and make pig noises to her and stuff. And always she'd wait for us to finish. She was very, very well mannered. And then she'd grunt back to us like a response.
There's a conversation
like
there.
A conversation, yes.
Beautiful. That's lovely.
And you could always tell too how she was feeling, because she, you know, sometimes she'd whine, and we'd sort of be reassuring to her and talk quietly to her as well. So, and that snout, the pig's nose, that is such an important organ for a pig, because apparently pigs' eyesight is not all that crash hot. But that snout, you look at the snout and you think it's a nose, it's a mouth, it's eyes, it's ears, it's everything. It moves around like this wobbly button all the time. So, yeah.
That's great. I'm going to ask Robert a couple more questions about animals in his life. But before I do that, for our viewers out there, please type in a question into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and I'll ask Robert those questions on your behalf. Tina Turner is a pet of yours, I understand.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's a chook that I have at the moment. It's Tina Turner. She's very loud. Not to say that Tina Turner isn't loud, but anyway, I decided to, when I got a few chooks just a while ago, to give them all names. So I can't remember all their names now, but they are named. I've got 4 chooks left. One of them's Tina Turner, and one of them's Little Patty. And there's Nina Simona's another one. Yeah, so I can sort of hardly tell them apart. It's just, but I'll always know Tina Turner, because she was the first chook to start laying out this flock that I've got at the moment, and she's still going strong after over 2 years.
That's great. And what about Hyperbole?
Oh, Hyperbole, that's my cat, Hyperbole. And so many people don't know that word or haven't heard that word. They ask me how to pronounce it. And then I took Hyperbole to the vet one day, and somebody there waiting with a dog called Blackie or something like that said, "Oh, what a stupid name to call an animal." And I thought, no, it's not a stupid name. I just love that name. And I think people's relationships with animals do involve the name that you choose for them, you know. And I say the word Hyperbole, and he hears it, and he sort of, as cats do, just walks with his head in the air, tail up, you know, quite pleased that he's the centre of attention, as cats always like to be.
That's right. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I had a cat called Tibble. And of course, in Romeo and Juliet, Tibble was the prince of cats.
Oh, right,
so
yes.
I thought he was my little prince there for a while. So anyway, crazy cat people. I better get on with the interview. I want to talk briefly about these gorgeous end papers that are part of your story here. So I don't know if everyone can see that, but there's some information about Saddleback pigs, as well as all the different tools that you can use on the farm. You want to just talk us through that for us?
Yes, because often books have nothing on those pages. They're just like blank pages, the end papers. End papers refer to the pages at the beginning of a book as well as the end of the book. And Mandy has cleverly got her boy, Josh, to draw some pictures there. And those pictures tell a lot about our farm, the tools that farmers use to mend fences, to build things, but it all relates to the saddleback pig. And the names given to other animals that might be black and white as well. So all the way through the story, you do see lots of other black and white animals, and you get a taste of that in the end papers as well. You also are informed at the beginning in those end papers that Esmeralda is a saddleback pig. And if I don't know whether I've mentioned that before or not, but the saddleback refers to the white strip on the front of black and white pigs, and Esmeralda was a saddleback pig.
And like, after reading such a beautifully put together book like this, we can't help but think, what's Robert got in store next? And I understand you've got some books awaiting approval with publishers.
Yes, I can't really sort of mention names and things at the moment, but some of them are overseas. I have been published overseas with some of my adult titles. Yes, the last few months I've been quite busy, and I have 2 other picture books that I'm working on, which are with publishers at the moment, awaiting approval.
Am I allowed to mention that one of them is about a toilet seat?
Oh, yes, that one hasn't been sent out into the world yet.
Oh. Sorry.
No. I'm still working on that one.
Okay.
You could say I'm still flush with ideas about what that one should be, but I have to put that one in there.
Yeah,
but yes, there's a general belief that that picture books have to be about people, toys, or animals, and that inanimate objects, you can't write about. You can't have them as sort of characters in a story. But I don't know. I'm just sitting on that one. But again. Anyway, so I've got 2 or 3 other picture books out with publishers at the moment, and I'm about 60,000 words into an adult novel as well, which I've just sort of put on hold for the time being, just so I can gather a bit of energy together to get that finished. I remember somebody, Janine Bryan, the other day was talking about, she's a very, very clever, beautiful writer, lives here in Adelaide, talking about all her, that's a lovely book. Talking about all the folders and ideas that she has, and I've just pulled out some of mine, and there's one folder of ideas, and I've got stuff going back before computers were invented. Used to do so much stuff in freehand, used to type a lot of stuff as well, and in some cases I've forgotten all the things that I've had published or performed as well. It's just since probably the late 90s when I thought, I think I might want to write. I don't know exactly what this writing game is all about. I mean, I could write maybe sort of an essay or something like that, but it's a lot different to sitting down and really working hard at writing a book and knowing how to write as well. So
what advice would you give to budding writers who are listening out there today?
I would say, don't just stick with your ideas. Get something down on paper or on computer, but don't be afraid of your ideas. Open up and have lots and lots of ideas. I even have a page of titles which I write down as well, just little snippets of information. I've got about 40 different sort of collections of words that I write down. So you might have a diary where you write these things down in. And it's kind of like, when you want to write, it's like creating a space for that other relationship in your life that you need to nurture, you need to feed. And if you're going to write, you have to really think about sitting down and actually physically doing the writing, getting the story out into the world. It means also reading and reading and reading. And if you've got an idea for a story, read and read lots of books. think in terms of whether it's going to be a picture book. And if it's a picture book, people say, oh, children's books are so easy, but picture books are quite difficult to write because they have to be very specific. The words have to be very, very specific. And I don't say I've always got that right, but
how many in Esmeralda's Nest? How many words?
I don't know. I think I can't remember what the word count was. I think it was about 270 to 300, something like that.
Okay, that seems a lot for what it is. But yeah, you have to be just so precise and crafty.
You do. And when you, I might just show you here. And this is what I sent to Midnight Sun a couple of years ago. And can you see that?
Yes, that's better.
That's a covering letter, which says hi, and I sort of talk about the story. And then I put in what I call a synopsis. And you don't always have to do a synopsis with a picture book because the words are quite... there's only a small number of words, but in this case, I have done one as well. And this particular document here is the actual story that I wrote.
Oh, right.
A couple of pages, and I've spaced it out as I felt the words. And then you kind of rely on the story standing up by itself without having to give a publisher any other information. But I thought in this particular case, because of the farms and stuff like that, not everybody would know what goes on with animals and farms and stuff. And so I did some background notes.
Yeah.
Also, I put down illustration ideas or thoughts. And I just they were not prescriptive, but they were just to inform whoever the illustrator would be where I was coming from and stuff like that. And I just do not. I'm overjoyed with what I see from an illustrator. You know, how they interpret those words, how they bring their own sort of artistry to the words, and Mandy has done a fabulous job.
She has. That's absolutely right. You were talking just before about to read a lot. Is there an author or even a children's duo that you've been inspired by to get your book out there as well, or your books?
I don't know. I think growing up in on the farm in Tassie, I was kind of hung up with my grandfather because he was a yarner, a storyteller in a way. There were so many stories being told on the farm, and I used to listen, I used to smell, and I was encouraged to listen, to smell, to taste, to hear. And my grandfather would play along with that sort of thing. I would go with him to each morning to find the lambs, the newborn lambs. I'd often go with him and watch him milk the cow and stuff like that, and he'd talk to me about those things. Anyway, I do remember when I started to read, and I remember someone reading to me. My mum would always read Beatrix Potter stories to me. And she would try to skip over them, so I would go to sleep, and I'd know that she was skipping over the words. And so Beatrix Potter was very, very important to me. But as a child, I had this awful disease called rheumatic fever, and I was confined to bed for about 2 months. And I was apparently, I could sort of vaguely remember it. I wasn't supposed to move at all because you can get very, very ill from rheumatic fever. And in those days, a lot of people around in the Derwent Valley where I grew up had rheumatic fever. And I read books, like I was in bed, but I had sort of pyramids of books all over me. I had all Enid Blyton books, but there was one book called Dr. Prickleback, and it was about a hedgehog doctor, and he had a bag with all his stuff, and he had a coat on, and all the prickles were sticking out of his coat at the back, and he was, yeah, I just remember that, Dr. Prickleback. And then there was another one called Nutchin of the Forest, and it was about an old woman. I've tried everywhere to find that book, who lived in a forest, and was all about the seasons of the year and all the animals helping her get ready for the winter, and they'd bring nuts and things for her to store and that. So yeah, I guess all that kind of seasonal sort of relationship with animals has always been there. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So we're just going to wrap up with a comment from one of our viewers, Marianne. And she's written, "This is such a beautiful classic children's book. I can hear little kids joining in with her waddling down the hill."
Oh,
So
thank you.
that's a nice way to finish off. Thank you, Marianne, for that feedback. So Robert, thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Kate. It's been a joy.
Yeah, it's been really lovely talking to you, and I love the way that you were able to show us some of the processes that are involved in putting a picture book together, and just how much Esmeralda is part of your heart, not just a character on a page. So thank you so much for that.
Yes, I'm sure Esmeralda would grunt with approval.
So to our viewers out there, thank you very much for joining us. And just to let you know that on Tuesday next week at 2 p.m, we'll be speaking to Bernadette Cashel-Smith. She's the author of a book called The Chocolate Calamity, which you can see behind me just here. And she writes about an Easter bunny and a calamity that hits Easter or bunny hop land just before Easter. So if you'd love to join us then, it would be really great. Enjoy the rest of Book Week celebrations at school and in your local library. And remember, keep reading. Thank you so much for joining us.